Hi everyone, today we got a bit of a nothing day, pretty flat right at the level here. We tried to get above it and then we finished below it right at the end of the session. Are we going to get that acceleration to the next level and then a major rejection off of this kind of rising wedge pattern that we've been watching? Let's take a look at the charts and see if we can find some more evidence for or against that thesis. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got CEOs coming out and saying that less than 30% of CEOs see either a mild or severe recession taking place in the next 6 months, according to the Chief Executive Group's last survey. So interesting to see that, well below the 60% who said it in April with the tariffs being put on. And now since that has all been walked back, we have a much rosier picture for the economy. And as you can see here, 270 participated, less than 30%, down from the 46% and 62% in April. So continues to walk down, and this is probably part of the reason we're seeing that bigger growth in markets over the last couple months. Moving over to fear and greed, we stepped down to a 62 from a 63. Markets still hovering here over the last day, still fear on momentum. Really very little movement. Breadth moved up slightly, interesting there. Put call ratio moved down pretty sharply actually, back into regular greed. Volatility still neutral. Safe haven demand continues to downtrend a little bit. And junk bonds still trending back up here from a low, sitting in regular greed. Moving over to the economic calendar here, pretty much nothing for the Monday. Atlanta Fed GDP was in line with expectations. Also not a whole lot here for tomorrow, but then we get CPI on Wednesday. So just be aware if you hold anything overnight into the Wednesday, you're going to be affected by that CPI read in the morning. Current expectations are a slight step up, 2.5 versus 2.3. Core number also expected to step up just a little bit. Month over month core also stepping up a little bit. So we'll see if we get a little bit of reinflation. And then look at this federal budget, minus 325 billion, previous number 258 billion, a little bit of a swing there from the previous number. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see basically unchanged, up just 50 cents right at that trend line, still holding support, 597.63. We'll see if this becomes an important level here or if we're going to push to that 604.50 level. I just don't think we're going to go. It could absolutely do it. It's not impossible. Anything is possible, but you can see here, we tried to get above it. We tried to hold above it just like we did on the Friday session, ended up falling below it at the close. And right now, it just feels like this is going to pull back down to that 597 level, and then potentially to that next trend would give you quite a bit more room down to 593, 594, somewhere in here. And then 591 would be my next horizontal support, which would take you down to that 200 SMA. So quite a bit of levels in here, and it just seems like this is really set to go and retrace some of this. We had a little bit of a flash, retraced it here as we expected. Can't seem to get any higher. There's not a whole lot of buyers, it feels like. But again, we'll see. Can it push here first and then do that? Absolutely possible as well. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, we're right in the middle of the range. We did see a very slight step on the trailing stop on the hourly, 597.48, 597.50, right in that range there. Really no change to the structure. And then looking at that 4-hour chart, we are still hanging out above that 8 EMA. Right now that is 598.89. So looking for this to pull back at least to the middle range. That would give you down into the kind of 596.60 area, a couple dollars lower. And then we'll see if we end up holding support in this area here, kind of like we did at that 34 EMA. That right now that's at 594.50 or so. Then moving over to the NASDAQ, really similar thesis to the SPY charts, up just slightly, 78 cents. Still cannot get above this trend line here. We've been watching it and it looked pretty clean on the day as well. This actually looked a little bit better on the NASDAQ versus the SPY charts. You can see came right to the level, rejected as you would expect. Found a little bit of support at the 21 EMA. We'll see if that ends up holding or not. But realistically, I'm expecting this to roll here at least a little bit. Do we pull back to the trend here around 526.40, maybe a little bit lower? We'll see how early in the session. You still have the 55 EMA in there as well at 529.14. So this is what I'm watching. You can see a lot of volume coming through in this area relative to some of these other areas, tons and tons of volume. And then if this pulls back, your next highly traded zone is all the way down here around 520. So that does give you a lot of risk and not a ton of reward right now, in my opinion. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, again, still holding on that 8 EMA, 530.08, held up really, really well during the session. Grinded on that level, couldn't really seem to go much higher. Very little volume on the day as well, as you would expect. That seems to be the theme here for Mondays. But looking at that hourly chart, the resistance from this previous trailing stop here was 531.66, and we did get above that here just a little bit, putting us back into bullish conditions. And then you can see just a little bit of a retracement. Is it going to go higher? See, the ATR bands are tightening here. Looks like consolidation at kind of a peak zone. Do we get that rejection from there? I am definitely looking for that bigger sell-off from here. Then moving over here to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell gapped up, almost hit the next target at 214.79. I expect to touch that before we see any kind of sell-off, but this is why we're seeing the acceleration. Just like we talked about, less chances of a potential recession in the next 6 months according to CEOs, and because of that, we're seeing buyers come through in those stocks that are most recession sensitive. Momentum bullish, RSI almost overbought again. If this retests and rejects from there, that's going to be concerning, but I would expect at least a test. And then looking at the Dow is completely flat, still same support and resistance, 526.20, 532.78. Moving over to the Mag 7, you can see the Mag 7 finally closed above the level 315.04. Not super convincingly, but it did get above it finally. If we see an acceleration and a close above these wicks here around 317, that would be interesting. But for now, technical break. Momentum stepping to bullish slightly, RSI right at the SMA. If it's going to reject, this is where it needs to do it. If it's going to break through, this is where it needs to do it. So watching the Mag 7 pretty closely here tomorrow. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, what a tale of two cities in this case. Apple continues to sell from this zone of resistance as we expected it to. Momentum stepping down, RSI stepping down. Microsoft, absolute rocket ship, all-time highs, continues to be very strong, continues to go higher. Back above these highs here. We had a long consolidation. We talked about it forever. Finally got the breakdown, very short-lived, rallied right back to all-time highs. Super good earnings, continues to look strong. Moving over to Tesla and NVDA. You can see Tesla was up 4.5% today. What an absolutely massive move. Almost went to the level 280, broke 301, almost 302 there. At the level, it's back above the 200. What a step to bullish on the RSI. This should retrace back to the SMA based on this indicator, right? So you got a low. Look for this to retrace to that RSI SMA, and then we'll see if we get the rejection or if we get the cut through there. Based on that indicator, you should see the counter trend rally, lower high setup, bigger sell-off from there. And then looking at NVIDIA, continues to kind of stall out above this 140 level, can't seem to get to the 150 level. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, a bit of a nothing burger here as well. Staples down just a smidgen, discretionaries up just a smidgen, still in the same consolidation range it has been in. After the touch, we've seen a little bit of a bounce. Is this a little bit of a risk on move here? Just a pullback in time, waiting for things to catch up. Still got a huge gap here to see if we go lower and refill some of that. And then looking at the RSI here, you can see that same kind of setup on Tesla. Big dip low. Do we hit the retracement, hit the SMA, and then see that bigger continuation downtrend? Still definitely a possibility. Moving over to breadth, definitely some mixed signals here on breadth. You got 20-day still in the same range, rejecting here, going a little bit lower, down about 7%. Momentum still flat. RSI rejecting 21 EMA as resistance. Interesting. Is this going to start to accelerate here after consolidation? That's interesting. And then looking at 50-day, we did get a nice flat candle, tried to go a little bit higher, rejected from there. This looks a little bit more like a swing up to me. Can we get into this kind of 83 area? Even if we did, there's not a ton of room to the upside for the 50-day to go. And remember, 50-day doesn't stay here nearly as long as 20-day. The fact that 20-day has stayed in this range for a couple of weeks is not a big deal. 50-day, typically you get 1 or 2 weeks, and then you start to see bigger moves down. You can see it here, about 1 week, bigger move down. And for now, we've been here for a couple of weeks. Haven't seen that retracement yet, but it will happen at some point. Do we go higher first? Maybe. Not a lot of room there, expecting this to sell. And then once we get one of those retracements, maybe as low as 46, I think makes sense. Get into here, then you can start to look to buy up a little bit more aggressively, in my opinion. Moving over to bonds, JNK and TLT, basically flat on the day, up about 10 cents a piece, still in the same kind of range. Is this another kind of bear flag setup? Maybe. We're still in this zone. Really very little movement across the board today. Same kind of thesis. You could argue slightly bearish here. You could also argue maybe slightly higher low here. I still think this is a medium to long-term buy on bonds, but in the short term, I think you could go either direction. Moving over to the VIX, you can see the VIX did kind of hover. We didn't get that dip to the low like I thought that we might. Interesting to see the VIX elevating slightly as we head closer to that CPI read. Momentum dead flat, RSI dead flat. So Didn't accelerate to the low, didn't touch the level. Is this something where you start to see a bit of a move to the upside? You got an inside candle. That is typically a reversal style candle. Does it work the same on the VIX? Not necessarily, but something to watch for. There's a little bit of a sign of life there on the VIX daily chart. Moving over to my accounts, I didn't do much on the day. I did sell some options on the IWM. You can see a couple of trades there, and I did leave one on for tomorrow at 213, but made some money on that. I sold one for today. That did fine, obviously, as they went higher. And then you can see the Qs, small loser there, overall net profit on the day. Still looking for the Qs to sell off to those lower levels like we talked about. The Russell, I think, is going to be fine. Might go with it a little bit, but the structure on the Russell is significantly more bullish than it is on the Qs or the SPY charts. Let me know down in the comment section if you agree with the CEOs. Do you think there is not going to be a recession now that all of the tariff stuff is short-term off the board, or is it going to come back and we're going to head back into a high likelihood of recession? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.